This is the Rebel Call channel. Welcome to today's show. If you haven't heard, Earth is temporarily getting a second moon. But don't be suspicious of any of this stuff because clearly they can continually tell you that all these anomalies that are happening out in the sky are just freaks of nature, right? You know, like seeing the northern lights every single month in almost every single state in America. And now even in other countries like the UK and Australia, they've claimed to see the northern lights. But they just tell us that NASA has told us and announced that we're going to have a mini moon for 2 months. So a secondary moon is going to appear in the sky next to the moon. And you're not supposed to be suspicious about it because NASA gives you a reasonable explanation. But of course, a reasonable explanation from NASA is pretty much them saying anything they want and the majority of sheeple believing it. I mean, NASA could literally come to the front door of the majority of these people who believe in NASA, stab them with a knife about 77 times, or probably in NASA's case, it would be 33 times. And while they're doing it, they could say, this is in the name of science. We're doing this for science. And the person getting stabbed would just say, oh, it's for science, right? This isn't murder, it's science, right? Because that's the point we've gotten to with science. So you may remember, like I said, the northern lights being visible, right? And I talked about how HAARP openly has even admitted to causing artificial auroras over Alaska. They've been causing artificial auroras over the United States as well in the year 2024. You might remember during the eclipse, there was lots of stuff out there about NASA and CERN gearing up for tests during the solar eclipse. Of course, after a lot of us got wind that NASA and CERN were running tests during the eclipse, they had to pump out the disinformation machine to try and say, hey, these people are conspiracy nuts. No, NASA's not doing that. No, CERN's not doing that, right? Meanwhile, at the same time, of course, you have countries like Spain and Belgium who are creating artificial eclipses, right? And of course, this notion of a secondary moon should automatically make people suspicious because there's too much stuff happening up in the sky. Too many abnormalities are happening, but you're not supposed to think, right? You're not supposed to say to yourself, hey, wait a minute, didn't Dubai just do a simulation up in the sky a couple years ago? Yeah, that's right. Dubai put up 2 moons in the sky as a simulation, a projection. Were they doing it because they wanted to entertain the civilians, you know, the ones that they enslave and tax and tell you to poison yourself or you won't have a job? You know, that same government? Oh, right. So you're going to tell me that that was just for fun, right? This was Dubai doing an experiment with 2 moons a couple of years ago.
Oh my God. Oh, what is that? Can you see it? Yeah. Yeah, it looks so nice. Oh God.
شكله غريب. هذا شكله صخرة في الهواء. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Look at that.
What's going on? Oh my God.
What's there?
Oh.
You see? It's like, and there are 2, right?
Yeah.
اثنين. أول مرة. Here. Oh, wow.
Okay, so we know that they're doing a lot of simulations in the sky. When I hear that there's 2 moons, obviously the first thing I think of is they're doing something. In fact, I'll get into what I really think is happening later in the video with Project Bluebeam, because the only reason they run simulations and experiments in the sky is because they're planning to do something in the sky to manipulate the masses. They're not putting these things in the sky because they want to entertain you. However, if you aren't familiar with just all of the stuff that they're doing, right? Creating fake eclipses, creating fake northern lights. Now, we're supposed to believe that we're having 2 moons because an asteroid they claim is in the sky, which I'll read to you what they're claiming it is in a minute. Don't forget about the 2 suns that were spotted in the sky. They were spotted in China. They were spotted in India. So 2 suns appeared in the sky, and people said, what in the world's going on? I see 2 suns. Is it my eyes? Somebody go tap the guy on the shoulder. Like, no, I see 2 suns also, right? And the government, of course, gives you an explanation as to what those 2 suns are. But then when you actually research what it really is, you see, wait, so in China we have 2 suns, but they're telling us that it's not really a secondary sun. It's a reflection that we're all seeing. So this is all in our heads, right? Meanwhile, at the same time, China is launching a fusion consortium to build an artificial sun, right? If you haven't seen some of the clips of the artificial suns, here's one. So we're supposed to believe that all this stuff in the sky is a giant coinkydink, right? People out there refuse to look up. So they know that they can continue to run these simulations and experiments in the sky. There's 2 things happening at once, right? Their foot's on the pedal to move forward with massive deceptions, right? Remember, the Vatican has now published updated norms for investigating alleged apparitions. So, of course, anything that happens in the sky, well, like I've said it before, the Vatican will give us the official confirmation of what is, because whatever they tell you, of course, believe the opposite, because the Vatican is not working with our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. They are not of God. They are of a different God that they worship, Lucifer. So shouldn't one think, after seeing some of the things I just showed you, their brains to start turning, that there's a lot of simulations happening in the sky? They're faking eclipses or trying to simulate eclipses. They're telling you this, right? They're telling us we're getting a second moon. While they're telling us they try to fake eclipses, they're telling us that there is a chance that there could be artificial aurora lights because testing is going on. NASA and CERN are gearing up for tests during the actual eclipse. Dubai saying, hey, we've made 2 artificial moons in the sky. China saying, hey, don't forget about us. We got 2 suns in the sky, right? But what do you believe that this is actually being done for? You don't think that these governments are trying to deceive you? What do you think these governments are trying to do? Entertain you? What do you think this is, you on the strip at Las Vegas and you're looking up at the sky and they just want to amuse you while you're walking around? For the most part, they actually never want you to look up. And most people don't, because otherwise they'd notice those hazy gray clouds every day in the sky that are poisoning us and making us sick, right? They don't notice those things because they're too busy looking at their phones. But in the event that you do look up and you see 2 moons, don't worry. The government has an answer for you. So starting next week, the moon, Earth's closest celestial body, will be joined by a new neighbor, a second moon. From the 29th of September until November 25th, astronomers calculate that 2024 PT5, which is what scientists think is an asteroid, but have dubbed a mini moon, will be looping around Earth. It will eventually break free of the planet's gravitational orbit. According to NASA, a near-Earth object is any body, asteroid, or otherwise that is nudged by the gravitational attraction of nearby planets that pushes them to Earth's neighborhood. NASA has their own program that works to track the locations and orbits of tens of thousands to 28,000 asteroids with data pages for every NEO, including their orbital parameters and a close approach summary. So, look, they're going to give you an explanation that this is an asteroid that's flying up in the sky. But if people actually just stop and say, why is so much stuff happening at once? We've never been so bothered by the government. We've never heard of so many weird things occurring. Maybe people should start thinking to themselves, are they running simulations and experiments in the sky? Because the explanation that they give never matches up with what's happening. Just like the northern lights continually appearing and they're telling you it's a geomagnetic storm. Well, we know what they're doing in the sky with chemtrailing and geoengineering. We also know that those gigantic towers that have popped up have the ability to send pulses and frequencies into the sky as well. So they're clearly doing something in the sky. They're clearly doing experiments, and they tell you this stuff ahead of time so that there's already an answer in place in case you might bump into your neighbor, and this might be visible one of those nights to you wherever you're located. And you might say, did you see that? And then you actually have an excuse to tell him what you think is occurring, like potentially a simulation or an experiment being done for something bigger in the future. And your neighbor will just say, you're crazy. NASA's already told us why. It's an asteroid in the sky. Bada bing, bada boom, that's the end of the story. That's why they put this stuff out there. In the event that people do notice it, there's already something in place. And of course, I'm sure between now and when this occurs in a couple of weeks at the end of September, they'll have information out there, which is disinformation, talking about debunking theories about simulations being done in the sky because they work the same way every time, right? Before the eclipse, they had to put all this stuff out about CERN, trying to discredit anybody that was questioning what CERN was doing, what kind of an experiment they were doing during the eclipse. Same with NASA, same with all these other things with the Northern Lights and everybody talking about HAARP. They have to come out and they have to put articles out there after the fact so that in case you do get through their first line of defense, which is telling you it's an asteroid, and then you say, yeah, it is a little bit weird. Why is all this stuff happening at once? Well, then they have their second layer of defense, right? Which is ridiculing conspiracy theories. So then every single article out there will be like, well, we've debunked this. And they don't debunk anything. They debunk it by saying, it's an asteroid. That's them debunking it. Oh, it's an asteroid, right? And we're supposed to believe what we're told because science has obviously proven us wrong and wrong and wrong because they make it up as they go. And these are the same people telling you that men can have babies now and that they can't define what a woman is, right? Maybe what we would call basic common science. So if you're asking what I think is occurring, I think they're doing simulations in the sky. I've talked about this for a while as they prepare for Project Bluebeam and potentially using different frequencies and different simulators and projections in the sky to see how far across they could reach, what the parameters are, what the reaction of people is. Because remember, the internet is nothing more than a data hub. Every single thing you post on Twitter, on YouTube, it's like we're giving away what's going on in our mind, right? Me talking about this stuff is stuff that I'm thinking, right? So I'm putting this out there for everybody who's like-minded like me and you to hear this, but also to help other people out there who are of a hive mind. But the government's listening to all of it. So every time they do an experiment, they watch and see how people respond. Were people suspicious? Were they not? Can they move forward with this? Do they need to put more disinformation out over there? Do they need to put more disinformation out about what CERN's doing because too many people are starting to tweet out or they're seeing too many keywords about CERN and black holes and actually opening portals? That's how they operate, and that's how they're moving forward with this because they know what everyone's thinking, and then they could figure out disinformation campaigns to put out because they are the ones who are producing nothing but disinformation. These are the same people that refuse to allow you to critically think on your own. They want to do the thinking for you. And of course, they have an army of sheeple out there that all they have to do is give an unreasonable explanation, like say it's an asteroid, and all these people will automatically defend it, and they'll laugh at people like us because their brains can't actually function outside of a delta brainwave, which is pretty much a state of being unconscious, a sleep state, which is what most of these people are in. So for anybody out there that doesn't know what Project Bluebeam is, let me play these clips that I put together in the past about Project Bluebeam so you can understand about what they're preparing for with fake simulations in the sky, fake alien invasions, all sorts of things that they have planned, including potentially using Project Bluebeam to simulate Jesus Christ's return or a different God for a different religion's return, which is what the original Project Bluebeam talked about, which was projecting, different gods for different faiths in different countries up in the sky to deceive them. But it's looking more and more like if they were to obviously simulate something, it might be some type of rapture event or what I believe will be the alien deception that they'll use in the sky. So here are some clips about Project Bluebeam. Take a look.
1986, while stationed at an underground installation near Boulder, Colorado, I was introduced to Project Skybeam by Lieutenant General Andrew Garris. I was then led down a corridor and into a large hangar where a stealth bomber hovered only 20 feet above me. I stood there confused. Then Garris looked over at me and smiled, then asked if I was certain of what I was seeing. I replied, of course. What else could it be? I was then shocked to find out that this wasn't a real craft. It was a projected hologram. Since the early 1950s, scientists had been developing holographic technology, and over the years improved it to a state that we can only imagine. As I stood there staring at the bomber, which looked so absolutely real and solid that I could reach up and touch it, I contemplated the possibilities. What if this projection was 1,000 feet up in the sky? How would anyone know that that was an illusion? The Phoenix Lights craft, witnessed by 10,000 people, was the first grand-scale skybeam test upon the public. It succeeded beyond expectations. In October 1938, Orson Welles unleashed his War of the Worlds radio broadcast to the American public. It was so realistically portrayed, vast portions of the population went into panic. Terrified citizens scrambled to evacuate their cities in droves. America had been easily tricked by very simple means. To amplify this response, those who are truly in power of not only our country, but all the countries on the planet, and who are the true purveyors of the depopulation process, have formulated the final stage of their sinister plan. In the year 2024, a global event will alter the course of mankind's future. The world will stand witness to a massive alien invasion. Thousands of projected holographic alien warships will blanket the skies, sending people into a global panic. Real military crafts within the holograms will inflict actual damage to the surrounding areas to sell the gimmick. And as a result of the ensuing human chaos, a one-world government will immediately form without any resistance from the people. They will be the new world order.
If enough people believe that something is real, then it is real in its effects.
In terms of the social reality.
In terms of the social reality, in terms of what people act according to their beliefs.
Yeah.
And that opens the question of, really at two levels, perhaps something that we are creating ourselves, perhaps a series of images that we are projecting. I think Carl Jung came very close to expressing that idea in one of his books. Or could it be manipulated purposely by people who have the technology to simulate UFO sightings? And people say, well, of course not. Who would do a thing like that? Well, I would remind you that during the Watergate investigation, it was discovered that there was a plan originated in the White House to surface a submarine off the coast of Cuba and paint the second coming of Christ over the island of Cuba using holograms. Which is well within our technology today. The idea was that since there is a large Catholic population in Cuba, they would be so upset by this vision that this would saturate the communication channels, the telephone system in Cuba, long enough for an invasion to take place.
How interesting. I never heard of that.
Well, I think that's a classic in psychological warfare, but that kind of manipulation is well understood. And I have personally investigated several apparently genuine UFO cases where there was, in fact, my conclusion, the conclusion of scientists working with me, was that there was, in fact, a manipulation taking place, and that it was not a hoax on the part of the witnesses, but a hoax on the part of somebody much better organized.
What do you think about aliens?
I don't think there are any. At one time, I thought that there were, simply based upon documents that I'd seen while I was attached to the intelligence briefing team, the commander-in-chief of the Pacific Fleet. At that time, and even for many years afterwards, I did not believe that the government would use me in that way. I had devoted my whole life to government service. I had been in the Air Force, I was in the Navy, I was a river patrol boat captain in Vietnam, I had proved myself, I had combat ribbons with the V for Valor. There was no doubt of my loyalty to my country, and maybe that's why it was so easy to use me, because I wouldn't doubt that what I saw was real. But over the years, I've done a lot of research. And what I've discovered is there's no proof existing anywhere that extraterrestrials are real, or that have ever visited this planet, or that they exist anywhere in the universe. There is not one shred of evidence anywhere. There is lots of evidence, tons of it in fact, that there are a group of people collectively known as the Illuminati who want us to believe in some extraterrestrial threat from space so that they can cause a world government, bringing together of all the people to resist that external threat. And the first time that I saw any reference to that, I was reading some papers from the Carnegie Endowment Fund, and there was a record of a speech. It was a dinner for Viscount Ishii of the Japanese delegation, the Japanese imperial delegation, in 1917. And John Dewey was one of the speakers. And the first sentence out of his mouth, as I was reading this, almost fell out of my chair, because this was in 1917, and he said the best way to cause all people in the world to come together in one world government and end war forever would be if we were attacked by some other species from some other planet. And boy, that just clicked with me, and I knew that this is just another scam. This is the age of deception. There's no doubt about it. And then 8 times during Reagan's administration, he inserted almost the exact same phrase into 8 of his speeches. And it's a scam. That's what I can tell you. What they call UFOs, these craft that fly around the sky, are real. But they're not piloted by some little green guy from some other planet. They're owned and operated by the United States of America for one, the Soviet Union for another, probably Great Britain, Canada. I think the The first really operable ones were probably manufactured in Western Canada, in the wilderness, in a place especially built to create those machines, like we created the Manhattan Project, and the same kind of secrecy surrounded it. So the technology is real. It's been kept secret, and it's been used to promote this concept that there's an alien threat to this earth. The cattle mutilations I've discovered in my research are nothing more than what's left after the government does its secret tests on the low-level radiation leakage from its atomic weapons assembly plants and atomic power plants. It's a low-level radiation monitoring project. And if you look at what's missing in the cattle, you'll see that it's just as clear as day. They take the lips, they take the tongue, they take a 6-inch patch of skin, they core out the rectum, the colon area, where those kinds of things would collect. They pass through the digestive system. On female cows, they take the udder to check for low-level radiation in the milk. This is being passed to the calves, and these are all grazing animals that graze on the grass where the radiation falls when it falls from the air, and it's just an incredible deception. And I'm just amazed that people have fallen for it in the manner that they have, in the absence of any proof whatsoever. I mean, they cite hearsay as proof.
Well, what about all of the alien abductions?
They're not abductions. They're the results of a tremendously successful and very sophisticated mind control operation, all of which has been in development. Well, they started working on those kinds of things since before World War II. But they have perfected them. On my website, I have a patent of a machine that can read your brainwaves, can recombine them in a computer and send them back to you and make you think things happened that never happened. I mean, you can't get a patent for something like that unless it really works. You have to prove it to the patent office. It works. A patent was issued. And this is just one of the things that snuck by them that hasn't. Because when people invent things like this, they're sucked up by the government immediately, and then they're put behind the veil of national security and classified, and then nobody knows about them. But every once in a while, something sneaks by them. And when you do these searches in the patent office, and the trademark office, and in the copyright office, you come up with some real gems once in a while, and that was one. Also, the congressional investigations into the intelligence community has revealed the existence of these programs, and there's no secret about it. It's documented. Project Artichoke, Project MK Ultra, MK Naomi. I could go on and on and on all day long. And if you had the time in your movie, we could lay out all the documentation, which is official government documentation, and prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that it's true. But that's what it is. It's not extraterrestrials coming down. The human body cannot pass through walls and roofs, or through windows that are closed. This is all the product of the imagination and people's willingness to believe something because they want it to be true. I don't know why they would want it to be true. You see, because if it were true, these are not friendly aliens. They're doing some terrible things to people. If I were to kidnap somebody, pass them up through the roof, and take them somewhere, and perform operations on them, and take samples of semen and ova from their reproductive organs, and plant thoughts in their mind, and all this kind of stuff, and then bring them back, guess where I'd be right now? In prison. It's kidnapping. It's criminal. It's a terrible thing. So there's a morbid sense about all this too, is that people want to be hurt for some reason. I don't understand that. That certainly is something that somebody needs to look at. Why do people feel that this needs to be real? What in them says, I want to be abducted and abused and kidnapped and raped and all of this stuff against my will? Because they seem to take some kind of satisfaction that this is happening. And nobody's talking about the fact that this is a terrible thing to happen. If I were to do that to you, you wouldn't be too happy, would you? But somehow it's okay if an alien does it? I don't think so. It's all bullshit. It's a lie.
The strategy that Wernher von Braun taught me was that first the Russians are going to be considered to be the enemy. In fact, when I met him in '74, they were the enemy, the identified enemy. We were told that they had killer satellites. We were told that they were coming to get us and control us, the dirty commies, that whole story. First, the Russians were the enemy against whom we're going to build space-based weapons. Then terrorists would be identified, and that was soon to follow. We heard a lot about terrorism. Then we were going to identify third world country crazies. We now call them nations of concern. But he said that would be the third enemy against whom we would be needing to build space-based weapons. And the next enemy was asteroids. Now, at this point, he kind of chuckled the first time he said it. Asteroids, against asteroids, we're going to build space-based weapons. So it was funny then. And the funniest one of all was against what he called aliens, extraterrestrials. That would be the final card. And over and over and over during the 4 years that I knew him and was giving his speeches for him, he would bring up that last card. And remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We're going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens. And all of it, he said, is a lie. He didn't mention a timeline, but he said that it was going to be speeding up faster than anybody could possibly imagine. That the effort to put weapons in space was not only based on a lie, but would accelerate past the point of people even understanding it until it was already up there.
So again, they want you to look at all the stuff that we all talk about. And all I'm saying is reasonably think here. I'm not telling you what you need to believe and what you have to believe, right? I'm telling you to start critically thinking. You don't think that that's a lot of suspicious activity happening in the sky all at once? What I read to you was mainly from 2024. We are in September and we have seen them talking about simulating eclipses, simulating northern lights. Now we have 2 moons, and this is a repetitive pattern. If you watch and see repetitiveness, it helps wake you up to what's going on. That's always been one of the keys to my channels, is talking about repetition, right? This isn't one thing happening in the sky that's weird where you could say, well, maybe it's just some weird fluky thing that happens every 75 to 100 years. This is a lot of activity in the sky. Lots of things going on that they're telling you, don't worry about what you're seeing in the sky. Don't be suspicious of what you're seeing in the sky. And really your brain should be saying, I am suspicious, because that's a lot of stuff going on in the sky. At the same time, you're telling us that you're trying to create simulators and projectors to be able to simulate these types of events. So what are you doing up there? Huh? What are you doing? Because people at the end of the day need to realize that NASA's not really doing what they claim to do. Otherwise, they would have went back to the moon, right? Oh, right, I forgot. They've claimed that they did go back. Only, 60 years later, minus people on the moon, because we all know that it was obviously filmed, just like when I covered that video's been removed, unfortunately, this summer that I did on the movie that just came out with ScarJo and Channing Tatum about faking the moon landing and just how in our faces it was. But I mean, pretty much everybody out there at this point should know, I would hope, about the moon landing being fake. I'm not sure if I'm reaching people who are that far asleep that actually think that all this stuff in the news is real. But of course, I'm trying to reach as many people as possible. And I hope you have information, or you're taking information from this channel. At the very least, you're critically thinking and saying, they're messing around in the sky. That's all you need to say to yourself. They're messing around in the sky. Why would HAARP be trying to create artificial auroras? Oh, because they make up an excuse that you can't figure out, right? So they make you sound dumb because they go, oh, you don't understand science, right? Just like CERN, we're trying to open a black hole. Well, that doesn't sound good. Well, then they give you an explanation. They go, well, you don't understand particles and you don't get it, man. And they just expect you to walk away and accept it because they've shamed you into not understanding what they're doing. But this is a spiritual war. And all of these things that they're doing in the sky are preparation for something much, much bigger. The 2 moons is not an asteroid sitting in the sky. It's something else. And you're allowed to have your own opinion on it. That's what my channel is, my opinion on these things. But I think it's very, very clear that something big is coming. Everybody can feel it. And it's not just the fake elections that are coming up. We're growing closer and closer to Agenda 2030. And if you think about all the stuff they've prepared us for and all the stuff that we know is going on in Antarctica with people like, Bill Gates and Bezos, these guys aren't getting any younger. And they're the face of this, what is about to occur. They're the face of this new world order. And I believe they fully expect to carry it out while they're still walking the earth. So 2 moons, don't be suspicious, because the government can give you whatever answer they want and you're supposed to believe it. Of course, if you question it, you're misinformation, disinformation, a bad human being, and you need to be silenced, because critical thinking is not allowed in a new world order, because if people actually think, they'll realize they don't want a new world order, right? I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.